All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Human Threats and Human Hacking Awareness. Throughout this presentation, my goal is to inform you of all the dangers that lie in the ones and zeros of the internet. My name is Preston Duller, and I am a cybersecurity student. I have been in the cybersecurity study for 2 years now. The main points we were planning on hitting today are the following five. Introduction to threats, where we will first introduce what it is that can cause high damage on the internet. Effects of threats, which is going to revolve around the actual damage that is caused. Recognizing a threat, where the main goal is to inform you all how to know when you're being targeted for an internet threat. And finally, threat prevention, where we can try and stop a malicious internet event from happening before it occurs. There will also be a contact slide at the end of the presentation for any of you who would like to gain more information, need more assistance, or anything else regarding resources on internet threats. Okay, so threat introduction. What is the goal here? Well, first off, it is to inform you all what an internet threat is, as well as how to recognize and prevent it. But overall, the true goal here is to prevent you, the listeners, and the future from becoming victims of the internet. Right now, all of you are vulnerable to attacks, and just like anything else, the only way that you can truly become strong against these internet threats is to understand the threats themselves. This is going to be done also to spread awareness. The more people that we can affect will lessen the number of people who can be susceptible to attacks and internet threats. With the rapidly increasing growth of internet users, the amount of victims will increase with it. So to combat this, awareness needs to be spread as well. This brings me to my next point. Spreading awareness to all kinds of internet users. Whether you use the internet for online shopping, playing video games, or just surfing around the internet, your cybersecurity is vital and should be understood. So what are some examples of these threats? Well, the first one is social engineering. Social engineering is probably the most important of these because it pretty much fits all these other threats under its belt. A social engineering attack is any attack that relies on the mistakes of human error to exploit valuable personal information. These attacks can be in person, online, or any kind of scenario where you are interacting with another person, whether you know it or not. Next, we have identity theft. Identity theft is an incredibly prevalent issue that I'm sure many of you are already aware of. Identity theft is not a new subject and has affected many for years. Identity theft is where your identity is stolen, in this case online. With identity theft, attackers can pretend to be you digitally and do things such as get new credit cards in your name and many other things that we will go over. Following identity theft is phishing. Phishing is a different kind of attack that relies heavily on social engineering. Phishing can best be explained by a fake claim by a reputable source that will result in a request of information. When given, this information is received by malicious attackers who use this information to attack and steal. And finally, we have internet and email scams put together for our last point. This, like social engineering, encapsulates almost all the other attacks. However, internet and email scams are not limited to things such as stolen information and data, personal use, could end up with a lot more detrimental effects than that. Many internet scams come to be due to online shopping between users. Okay, to finish up the introduction, we have possibly the most important slide today. And this revolves around people. The weakest link in the chain for corporations and individuals is not their computers making mistakes for them or their hardware being vulnerable. It's the people themselves. Most of the time an attack occurs, it is due to social engineering and human error. People are hacked, not computers. People are scammed, not computers. People are attacked, not computers. And finally, people are imperfect, not computers. The biggest threat to your device is you. The biggest threat to your data is you. And the more you are informed, the more that you are secured. Effective threats is going to cover the many horrible things that occur as a result of individuals falling victim to threats on the internet. These include current data collected on damages and projected data as well, that only you, as the users of the internet, can help try and prove wrong. Okay, first we have social engineering. Social engineering, like stated earlier, is definitely more of a broad attack that encapsulates the rest of the attacks that are going to be pinpointed in this presentation. Social engineering comprises up more than half of successful attacks for businesses. And after 2012, up until 2017, social engineering attacks were responsible for roughly $5 billion worth of damages. Next, we have phishing attacks and its effects. Phishing usually affects a small number of people who are attacked. As you can see on the screen, it is a very small percentage. But given the amount of emails that are sent per day, over 3 billion according to Tech Republic, and almost half of all spam messages are considered to be phishing emails, the number of affected people is still extremely large. In terms of money, between 2.4 to 9.4 million dollars in annual fraud loss because of phishing is lost per 1 million online banking clients every year. Um, on top of this, a growth of 200% in phishing attempts since 2019 to 2020 took place. This means that its frequency has doubled in just 1 year. By 2025, it's projected that $1.94 trillion will be lost annually to phishing. This is given that its growth rate is nearing 9.5%. Moving on to internet scams, which is also very broad. This contains things such as non-delivery, non-payment scams, when buying items from another individual and companies on the web. IC3, the Internet Crime Complaint Center, headed by the FBI, reports a loss of $4.1 billion overall from cybercrime in 2020. Almost 110,000 people fell victim to non-payment, non-delivery scams in 2020, right on the heels of phishing being the second largest attack type. Personal data breaches from internet scams also affected 45,330 victims in the same year. Also stated by the FBI, a total of $265 million was lost to these non-delivery scams, which averages out to be a loss of almost $2,500 per person. Cybercrime and internet scams are looking to be headed towards $10.5 trillion annually by 2025 at a rate of 15% every year. Identity theft affected 47% of Americans in 2020. This resulted in $712 billion being lost to identity theft, which increased from 2019 by 42%. These losses are also subjected to stack up to $721 billion in loss this year. So, with all this data I presented, how can you recognize a threat? This obviously is the main reason and goal for this presentation. The signs of threats and danger on the internet exist with each attack and can be recognized. This is threat recognition. The first thing we are going to learn how to recognize together is social engineering, because social engineering attacks, again, hold all these other attacks with it and is the most common. Usually in social engineering attacks, the attacker will contact you and not the other way around. This can be best shown by an example of something like false tech support calls, or a claim on your computer that you've downloaded a virus and need to call a number, which may seem like they're responding to you, but actually elicited the attack in the first place. A social tactic that can be recognized by these attackers is they will try and rush you, and claim that their needs need to be met immediately. This builds pressure on victims as well as fear. Attackers will also try and build connections or offer incentives, all in deception. Now, for phishing attacks, there are telltale signs. Phishing attacks will usually look like they're coming from a trusted individual or a company, but are maybe slightly a bit off. Phishing attacks can look identical to their counterparts, however, which is why recognizing word choice and language is important. Almost always, the attack results with a link being sent to the victim where they will enter the link and are prompted for many things. Recognizing that the phishing link is in fact a phishing link will be mainly due to the fact that phishing links always ask for personal information, such as passwords and banking information that will be logged. Alright, so recognizing an internet scam. Things like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, or any site and meetup where you exchange money for goods, or even goods for goods, has a risk of being a scam. Most of the time, people will take payment and never ship an item, or never meet up, or they will have you ship an item and not pay it. Other internet scams revolve around impersonation with a request for money. These internet scams usually pose as family members or other people of power that require your assistance. Common scams flooding around the web right now to look out for include COVID-19 scams and government benefit scams, which seem to be the aim of the perpetrators of internet scams currently. And finally, identity theft scams. Identity theft, usually through social engineering or phishing. So most of the recognition signs that will be shown here are going to be recognition signs early on in the attack in the event that your identity has been compromised. This includes a lack of bills or scheduled mail that usually comes in. This is made worse by the IRS contacting you about multiple tax returns being issued in your name, which can actually be confused for scams themselves. Debt collectors approaching you for debt you are not aware of is also a huge sign that your identity has been stolen. And finally, of course, unexplained big withdrawals. Okay, so threat prevention. Threat prevention is our focus here, as recognizing a threat may not always be enough. Of course, threat recognition falls into this category, but threat prevention focuses directly on preventing the damage itself, and if not, preventing damage that can be done soon. Phishing scams can be prevented. One of the things that can help prevent this is security software made for phishing prevention. You can find them scattered across the web, and there's a variety to choose from. Next is automatic updates to be set and applied to your devices due to inbuilt security settings, requiring updates to function to its best extent. Next is multi-factor authentication for accounts. Multi-factor authentication requires users to input their passwords as well as a security code sent to another device or way of communication to the user in order to ensure that the person activating the account is truly them. This is essential. This can prevent successful phishing attacks from actually accessing your accounts. Finally, we have backed up data, which is more of a failsafe than a prevention. Backing up your data allows for presence of mind when data is stolen/lost as a result of phishing or other causes of loss of data. Social engineering can be prevented as well. A big thing here is physical social engineering being prevented by avoiding shoulder surfing, which means you're always very wary of what and who is around you when accessing useful personal data. Another big thing here is thinking about before posting on social media or anywhere else where information can be publicly accessed. Many social engineering attacks will attack you based on open information found out about you through any means they can, and not being careful when posting almost invites them to attack. Finally, use a good password with the following rules and procedures that I'm sure everyone knows about, but this is so vital to security that enforcing it always helps and is important. Internet scam prevention ties a lot more closely with recognition. Recognizing the common scams flowing around is incredibly important for prevention. Blocking unwanted calls and messages is also a must, as attackers can prove to be consistent and devious. If you are still in the questioning of legitimacy stage of an internet interaction, deny immediate action. Do not make quick rash decisions or be swayed by possible perpetrators. This leads us to our next point. Talking to a professional or someone you trust. This could be a family member or a close friend that you have high trust in, or even looking to the internet to see whether or not you are in the midst of a scam. Finally, understand the objective of scammers, which is almost always money, and recognize how your money can be accessed by you. Identity theft can be prevented just the same as these other attacks. Destroying any outdated and unused documents digitally or physically that have information that is personal and important to you is strongly suggested. Avoiding public internets and sites that are not secure and trusted is also good practice for preventing identity theft. Understanding phishing attacks can also prove to be useful here, as many identity theft attacks are made possible by phishing and social engineering. Regularly review your accounts through statements and reporting suspicious charges made to your accounts also tends to help mitigate the effects of identity theft and prevent damage and further damage that can occur. All internet threats primarily have preventions that can be applied to each other. The largest attacks were covered in this scope of effect. Anyone can be attacked easily for these attacks, and their prevalence only increases with time and development of technology. Our goals that we're stated in the beginning were all met, and the final goal is for you, the audience, to retain the information that you learned about understanding the effects, learning to recognize the attacks, and preventing damage from occurring. The spread of information will evolve with the internet, but sometimes it needs a little push. Thank you to everyone watching this. Not only will it benefit you as a navigator on the internet and its ones and zeros, but it will help make the internet itself secure as a whole. Any further questions or further reading and resources can be directed to Dr. Ann Conkey, Department of Cybersecurity and Information Systems, and Principal Investigator for the Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense at Detroit Mercy. Her information is displayed on the screen.